In a city where appearances matter and judgment is swift, Maya Thompson, a quiet but determined high school senior, walks into a high-end boutique searching for the perfect dress for her winter formal. What should have been an ordinary moment, a teenager excited about a milestone event, spirals into something far more significant. A harsh encounter with a dismissive store manager, a stinging humiliation, and one powerful decision to speak up set Maya on an unexpected journey. With a single video, Maya's story spreads further than she ever imagined, sparking a movement she never meant to start. But with newfound attention comes resistance, doubt, pushback, and the weight of countless other stories just like hers. As Maya navigates the challenges of finding her own voice while living in the shadow of her father's fame, she learns that strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. What happens when one voice refuses to be silenced? Can courage in the face of injustice ignite real change? And how will a girl who once felt invisible come to realize her true strength? The late afternoon sun spilled over the polished streets of downtown Los Angeles, its golden glow dancing along rows of high-end boutiques and luxury stores. Maya Thompson pulled into a quiet parking spot a block away, her father's hand-me-down SUV blending awkwardly with the sleek cars that lined the curb. She turned off the ignition and exhaled slowly, her hands gripping the worn steering wheel. Today was supposed to be special. It was the first time she had stepped out alone to find something just for herself, a dress for the winter formal. She had spent weeks saving money from her part-time tutoring job. To anyone else, it might just be a dance. To Maya, it was more than that. The winter formal was her chance to be seen, not as Michael Thompson's daughter, the retired basketball legend whose fame still echoed across sports news and fan pages. Not as the quiet girl in the back row at school, wearing faded jeans and second-hand sweatshirts. This dance was Maya's opportunity to step into a new light, to prove that she was more than the shadow of someone else's greatness. Maya tugged at her oversized sweatshirt, catching sight of her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her brown eyes, deep and thoughtful, stared back at her. She tied her curls into a loose ponytail, adjusted her simple gold stud earrings, and grabbed her purse from the passenger seat. "Just go in. Look confident," she whispered to herself, forcing a smile that felt heavier than she wanted. The store she had chosen, AUM, was one of the most upscale boutiques in the city. She had stumbled across their website weeks ago and had fallen in love with their dresses, elegant, flowing pieces that seemed to shimmer even through a computer screen. She knew the prices were steep, but she had promised herself she would find a way. Even if she had to settle for a sale rack or last season's styles, she would walk out with something beautiful. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, the world around her seemed to shrink. The sound of her sneakers against the pavement felt out of place amid the clicking of designer heels and the hum of expensive cars rolling past. A couple emerged from a nearby boutique, the woman's laughter sharp and bright, and Maya felt a flicker of doubt rise in her chest. She shook it off. "You deserve this," she reminded herself. The boutique's glass doors gleamed in the sunlight. Above them, the name AUM shone in delicate gold lettering. The window displays were works of art, mannequins draped in silk gowns, their waists cinched and skirts cascading like waterfalls. Maya swallowed hard as she pushed open the door. The soft chime of the bell overhead echoed through the quiet interior. Inside, the boutique was pristine and dazzling. White marble floors reflected the golden light spilling from chandelier fixtures above. The racks were spaced widely, showcasing the dresses like treasures in a museum. The faint scent of citrus and roses hung in the air, mingling with the soft strains of classical music playing from hidden speakers. Maya paused, taking it all in. For a brief moment, she imagined herself spinning in one of the gowns, confident and radiant. But that moment shattered the second she noticed the stares. There were 4 employees scattered across the boutique, all impeccably dressed in sleek black outfits. Their gazes snapped to Maya the moment she entered, cool, assessing, unwelcoming. A tall woman stood behind the counter, her posture ramrod straight. Her blonde bob was sharp and immaculate, and her expression mirrored the cold marble beneath Maya's feet. Her name tag read, Jessica Monroe. Maya's smile faltered, but she lifted her chin and stepped forward. She pretended not to notice the glances and whispers. She had been here before, not in this store, but in moments like this, being judged, measured, and found lacking. Determined to focus, Maya walked to a rack of evening gowns. The dresses shimmered like the ocean under moonlight, rich blues, deep reds, and soft golds. She ran her fingers over a midnight blue gown, the fabric so smooth it felt like liquid beneath her touch. It was the perfect dress. "Excuse me," Maya said, her voice soft but steady as she turned to the counter. Jessica barely glanced up from the tablet in her hands. "Are you sure you are in the right place?" Jessica asked, her voice cool and clipped. Maya blinked. I'm looking for a dress. For the winter formal." Jessica's eyes finally lifted, scanning Maya from head to toe. The pause was deliberate, each second stretching like an eternity. "That dress," Jessica said, gesturing lazily at the gown Maya had been admiring, "is part of our exclusive collection. It is not typically something we let everyone try on." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She felt the heat rise to her cheeks, her pulse quickening. "I am a customer," she said firmly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I would like to try it on." Jessica's lips curled into a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. "Of course you are," she said, her tone mocking. "But perhaps I can recommend something more accessible." The word hung in the air like poison. Accessible. Maya clenched her fists at her sides, the anger bubbling just beneath her skin. She had heard it before, in different ways. "You do not belong. You are not good enough. You are out of place." "I want to try this dress," Maya repeated, louder this time. Her voice cracked slightly, but she held her ground. Jessica finally stepped out from behind the counter, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She walked toward Maya, her movements predatory. When she was close enough, she leaned in just slightly and whispered, "Girls like you do not belong here." The words sliced through Maya's resolve like a knife. For a moment, she could not breathe. The fire in her chest flickered, threatening to go out entirely. Her mind raced. Had she really thought she could fit into this world? That she could be someone worthy of a dress like this? Jessica straightened, her expression composed once more. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said flatly, turning on her heel. Maya stood frozen, her fists trembling at her sides. Around her, the store seemed to close in its luxury, now a cage rather than an escape. She should leave, walk out, and never look back. But the fire inside her flared again, stronger this time. She would not let this woman make her feel small. Not today. With a deep breath, Maya grabbed the midnight blue gown and marched toward the fitting rooms, her sneakers squeaking against the marble. The sound was loud, out of place, and unapologetic. "Miss!" Jessica's voice cut through the air. "I must insist you stop right there." Maya turned slowly, the gown draped over her arm. Jessica stood near the counter, her arms crossed tightly. "You are not welcome to try that on," Jessica said, her tone sharp. "Put it back." "No," Maya said, her voice clear. "I am going to try this on." Jessica's expression darkened. "How do you intend to pay for it?" she asked. Maya's jaw tightened. "That is none of your business." Jessica stepped closer, her heels clicking louder now. "People like you come in here all the time," she hissed, "touching things you cannot afford, wasting our time." The words stung, but Maya held her ground. "I am a customer," she said again, louder now. "You do not get to treat me like this." Jessica's eyes flashed, and in a sudden motion, she snatched the dress from Maya's arm. "Give me that!" she snapped, tugging it sharply. Stop! Maya cried, reaching for it. Jessica's hand lashed out suddenly, the slap cracking across Maya's cheek. The sound echoed through the boutique like a gunshot. For a moment, everything was still. Maya staggered back a step, her hand flying to her cheek as the sting burned hot against her skin. She stared at Jessica, stunned into silence. Around them, the employees and a handful of other customers watched with wide eyes. But no one moved. You just hit me, Maya said quietly, her voice trembling. Jessica froze, the anger on her face flickering to something like shock. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Maya felt the tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She straightened her posture, her hands curling into fists. You think you can treat people like this and get away with it? She demanded, her voice rising. The boutique remained silent. No one came to her defense. No one spoke. Maya turned on her heel, her sneakers squeaking loudly as she walked toward the exit. She shoved the glass door open and stepped into the sunlight, the cool air hitting her flushed cheeks like a balm. Her heart pounded as she walked down the street, her mind a whirlwind of anger, humiliation, and disbelief. She reached her car and sat down, staring blankly at the steering wheel. Then, with trembling hands, Maya pulled out her phone. She stared at the screen, her reflection faint in the glass. Slowly, she opened the camera app. This ends here, she whispered to herself, her voice steadier now. The world outside Maya's car was moving, but inside, everything felt still. The faint hum of traffic, the distant chatter of pedestrians, none of it registered. She sat with her phone in her hand, her thumb hovering over the record button. Her cheeks still stung, but the deeper pain, the humiliation, the disbelief burned stronger. Jessica Monroe's words echoed in her mind. Girls like you do not belong here. Maya squeezed her eyes shut, as if trying to push the words out. Then, slowly, she turned the camera on herself. The faint red mark on her cheek stood out in the soft afternoon light. Her curls framed her face, slightly disheveled from the confrontation, but her brown eyes held a fire she had not felt in a long time. My name is Maya Thompson, she said softly, then cleared her throat and started again. This time, her voice was stronger. My name is Maya Thompson. I just walked into a boutique called AUM to try on a dress for my winter formal. Her voice trembled, but she pushed through. When I picked out a dress and asked to try it on, the manager humiliated me. She said people like me do not belong in her store. And then she hit me. Maya paused, her breathing shaky. She could feel her heartbeat pounding in her ears, but she refused to stop. I am sharing this because it is not just about me. This happens to people every day, people who are judged, insulted, and made to feel small because of how they look, where they come from, or who people think they are. She stared at the camera for a moment, as if imagining the people who might see her words. Then she finished, I am tired of being quiet. It has to stop. It starts here. She hit stop and stared at the screen, her reflection now frozen in the image of her video. For a moment, she hesitated. Sharing this felt vulnerable, like peeling back a layer of herself for the world to see. But then she remembered Jessica's smirk, the sting of the slap, and the way no one in that boutique had said a word in her defense. Her thumb hovered for only a second longer before she hit post. The caption was simple. This is not just about me. Stand up together. She sat back against her seat, exhaling sharply as the notification pinged. Your video has been posted. The drive home felt longer than usual. Maya kept glancing at her phone on the passenger seat as notifications began to trickle in likes, comments, and shares. She knew the video would gain attention. She had a modest following on social media, mostly people who followed her father or classmates from school, but she was not prepared for how fast it would spread. By the time Maya pulled into her driveway, the video had over 1,000 views. Her hands trembled as she turned off the car and stepped into the house. Her father, Michael Thompson, was sitting on the living room couch with his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose and a newspaper in his hands. His broad frame and calm demeanor made him seem larger than life, even in retirement. The moment he saw Maya, though, the calm shifted to concern. "Hey, kid," he said, lowering the newspaper. "You're home early. What happened?" Maya hesitated, her bag slipping from her shoulder to the floor. "It's a long story," she said quietly. Michael frowned, setting the newspaper aside. "Come here." Maya walked over and sat beside him, feeling the weight of the day settle on her shoulders. She pulled out her phone and handed it to him. The video paused on her face. Michael studied it, his expression unreadable as he hit play. Maya watched him as the video unfolded, her heart pounding with every second. When it ended, Michael let out a slow breath, his face a mixture of anger and sadness. He looked at her, his deep brown eyes softening. "She hit you?" Maya nodded. Michael's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. "Are you okay?" "I guess," Maya said, shrugging slightly. It hurt. Not just the slap, everything she said. She looked at me like I was nothing." Michael's shoulders tensed. "You are not nothing, Maya. And no one has the right to treat you that way." Maya bit her lip to keep it from trembling. "I posted the video," she said. "I could not let it slide. I had to say something." Michael nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. "Good. You did the right thing. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the hardest thing to do, but it is also the most important." "Dad," Maya said quietly, her voice wavering. "What if it just makes everything worse? What if people think I am overreacting, or they start talking about you instead of me?" Michael sighed and pulled her into a gentle hug. "I know what it feels like to carry a name that comes with expectations. But you are not just my daughter, Maya. You are your own person, and you have your own voice. People will talk, but what matters most is that you know who you are." Maya let his words sink in, her cheek resting against his shoulder. That night, Maya sat cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through her phone. The video had gone viral. The views had jumped to 10,000, and the comments were pouring in faster than she could read them. Some were supportive. "You are so brave for sharing this. I am sorry this happened to you. Thank you for speaking up. This happens too often, and people need to see it." Others, of course, were not so kind. "She probably made this up for attention. Must be nice to be the rich kid crying about a dress." Maya's stomach tightened as she scrolled past the negative comments, each one stinging more than the last. But then she saw something unexpected, an anonymous message from a woman named Carla Bennett. The message read, "Hi, Maya. I saw your video. I used to work at AUM. The manager you talked about, Jessica Monroe, has done this before. I am so sorry for what happened to you. If you need someone to back you up, I am here. People like her need to be held accountable." Maya stared at the message for a long moment, her heart racing. She had not expected anyone to come forward, let alone someone who had worked with Jessica. "What if she is telling the truth?" Maya whispered to herself. Before she could second-guess herself, she typed a response. "Thank you for reaching out. Can we talk more about this?" Carla replied almost immediately. "Of course, you are not alone in this, Maya." Maya sat back against the pillows, her phone still clutched in her hands. The words, "You are not alone," rang in her mind, and for the first time all day, she felt a small flicker of hope. The next morning, Maya woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. She blinked groggily, sunlight streaming through the curtains, and reached for it on her nightstand. Her eyes widened as she saw the notifications. Messages from friends, classmates, and strangers were flooding in. Even local news outlets had shared her video, and the hashtag #StandUpTogether was beginning to trend. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through the messages. Among them was one from her best friend Emma Reynolds. OMG, Maya, I saw your video. Are you okay? You are amazing for sharing that. Everyone is talking about it. Maya smiled faintly and typed back, Thanks, Emma. I'll explain everything later. Her door creaked open, and her father appeared in the doorway, holding his phone. Morning, kiddo, he said. Looks like you started something big. Maya sat up, still processing everything. I guess so. Michael walked over and sat on the edge of her bed, his voice steady. People are going to keep watching, Maya, so what are you going to do next? Maya looked at him, her expression determined. I am not going to let this go, Dad. Not yet. Michael nodded approvingly. Then I am with you every step of the way. As her father left the room, Maya stared at the phone in her hands. The world felt a little less quiet now, a little less small, and for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she was finally being heard. Maya's fingers hovered over her keyboard as she stared at the message from Carla Bennett. The former AUM employee's words played over and over in her head. Jessica has done this before. If you need someone to back you up, I'm here. For the first time since the incident, Maya felt like she wasn't alone. Someone believed her. Someone who had seen Jessica for who she really was. That small bit of validation settled over her like a warm blanket. She began typing her response carefully. Thank you so much, Carla. Can you tell me what happened when you worked there? I really want to understand, Carla replied almost instantly. It's not just you, Maya. Jessica has a pattern of treating people unfairly, especially if she thinks they don't fit her idea of the store's image. She made life miserable for me and a lot of customers who didn't look or act the way she wanted. I quit because I couldn't stand it anymore. If you need me to share my story publicly, I will. People like her need to be held accountable. Maya reread the message, her heart pounding. The fire inside her, dimmed by doubt and humiliation the day before, began to burn brighter. Carla was right. People like Jessica Monroe could get away with their behavior because no one ever spoke out. They counted on silence on people walking away quietly, ashamed and defeated. Maya wasn't going to let that happen. Not anymore. She opened her video app again and took a deep breath before hitting record. The screen blinked to life, framing her face. Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you for all the messages of support. It means more to me than I can say. But this isn't just about me. Since sharing my story, I've heard from people who have had similar experiences, people who've been treated unfairly, judged, and dismissed. One of them is Carla Bennett, who worked at the boutique where this happened. Maya paused, gathering her thoughts. I want to share Carla's words, not just because they help me, but because they show this isn't an isolated incident. This happens all the time, to people who don't have the platform to speak up. I hope this encourages others to share their stories too. Because change starts with us, and it starts when we refuse to stay silent. She stopped the recording, a lump forming in her throat. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. That was enough. Maya uploaded the video, attaching Carla's message as a caption. She ended it with the hashtag, Stand Up Together. The day unfolded in a blur of notifications and activity. Maya sat on the couch with her laptop perched on her knees, watching as her second video gained even more momentum. Comments flooded in messages of solidarity, anger at Jessica's behavior, and encouragement from complete strangers. Her best friend Emma sent a text just after lunch. Maya, you're everywhere right now. I saw your video on the news. Are you okay? Call me! Maya smiled softly as she called Emma. It didn't take long before her best friend's voice bubbled through the line. Girl, you're famous, Emma teased, but her tone quickly turned serious. For real though, are you holding up okay? Maya leaned back against the couch cushions. It's been overwhelming, but I'm okay. It's just weird, seeing so many people reacting to something so personal. Emma was quiet for a beat. You're brave, Maya. Most people wouldn't have the guts to speak up. I'm proud of you. Maya felt her throat tighten. Thanks, Em. Well, Emma continued, her voice lifting again. If you need backup, I'll start my own hashtag, Maya deserves the dress. We'll get you that gown. Maya laughed softly, a real laugh that felt good after so much heaviness. I'll hold you to that. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. Maya looked up from her phone to see her father's towering silhouette passing the front window. She heard his deep voice greeting someone before the door opened. Maya? Michael called. There's someone here to see you. Maya stood slowly, her brow furrowed. When she reached the doorway, she froze. A petite woman in her early 30s stood on the porch. She had soft brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore jeans and a casual sweater. Her expression was kind but hesitant. Hi, Maya, she said gently. I'm Carla Bennett. Maya's eyes widened in surprise. You came here? Carla nodded, shifting nervously. I hope it's okay. I saw your video, and I wanted to meet you in person. I wanted to say that what you're doing is brave, and you're not alone. Michael looked between them and nodded. Why don't you both come inside? I'll get us some water. Maya led Carla to the living room, where they sat across from each other on the couch. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Carla offered a small, sad smile. When I worked at AUM, she began, I watched Jessica treat people horribly all the time, especially customers she thought didn't belong there. It wasn't just subtle, she made it obvious. I complained to corporate once, but nothing ever happened. She always found a way to make it look like the customers were the problem. Maya listened intently, her anger simmering quietly. Why didn't you say anything sooner? Carla sighed, looking down at her hands. I needed the job. I didn't have the courage to risk everything to speak up. But seeing your video, seeing how you stood up for yourself, it made me realize that I can't keep pretending it's not happening. Maya felt tears pricking her eyes. She reached across the couch and squeezed Carla's hand. Thank you for telling me this. It means a lot. Carla smiled faintly. No, thank you. You gave me the push I needed. You have no idea how much that matters. Maya sat back, processing Carla's words. Kindness can come from the most unexpected places, she realized. Carla had no obligation to come forward, but she did, and her courage gave Maya strength. That evening, after Carla left, Maya sat with her father in the kitchen as he washed dishes. The hum of the water and the clinking of plates filled the quiet between them. So, what's next? Michael asked, glancing over his shoulder. Maya shrugged, staring at her phone. I don't know. Carla's willing to back me up, but it feels bigger than just her and me. Michael turned off the faucet and dried his hands. He sat down across from Maya and looked at her seriously. It is bigger than you, Maya. What happened in that boutique, what happens to people like Carla, like you, it's not just one store. It's everywhere. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Maya fiddled with the edge of her sweater, her mind spinning. I want people to know they don't have to stay silent. I want them to feel like their voices matter. Michael smiled softly. Then start there. You've already lit the spark, kid. Now you just have to keep it going. Maya nodded, a plan beginning to take shape in her mind. She didn't just want justice for herself. She wanted to create something bigger, a movement that would inspire others to stand up too. She opened her laptop and began typing. Have you ever been made to feel like you don't belong? Share your story with me. Let's stand together, stand up together. As she hit post, a sense of purpose settled over her. For the first time since the incident, she felt like she was in control again. Her phone buzzed with new notifications, each one a reminder that her voice was being heard. Maya glanced at her father, who gave her a nod of encouragement. You're doing something important, Maya, he said. Keep going. And she would. As Maya sat back and watched the responses pour in, she knew this was only the beginning. The morning light slipped through Maya's bedroom window, warming her face as she stirred beneath her blankets. Her phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand, and as she reached for it, a flood of notifications greeted her. The post she had written the night before was everywhere. "Stand Up Together" was trending. Strangers were sharing their stories, tagging Maya's name, and thanking her for giving them the courage to speak up. She sat up slowly, her heart pounding as she scrolled through the comments. "I was turned away from a store because of how I looked. Thank you for saying what so many of us couldn't. This happened to me last year, and I felt so alone. Stand up together. It's time for change. Thank you, Maya." The messages filled Maya with a mix of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. What had started as a single post to share her story was now spiraling into something much bigger. Her phone buzzed with a call. Emma's name flashed across the screen. "Hey, Em," Maya said, her voice still groggy. "Maya!" Emma's voice practically shrieked through the speaker. "Do you even know what's happening right now? You're all over the news." Maya blinked. "The news?" "Yes. Turn on the TV, right now." Maya stumbled out of bed and grabbed the remote, flipping to a local news channel. There, on the screen, was a still image from her video, her face determined, her caption bold beneath it. The anchor's voice filled the room. The viral video posted by 17-year-old Maya Thompson has sparked a growing movement online. The hashtag #StandUpTogether has become a rallying cry for people sharing their own experiences with discrimination, particularly in retail spaces. Maya, the daughter of retired basketball star Michael Thompson, is now being called a voice for change among young people. Maya sank onto the edge of her bed, her breath catching. The anchor continued. While the boutique at the center of the controversy, AUM, has yet to release a full statement, their corporate office has acknowledged the incident and promised to conduct a review. The screen cut to a photo of the boutique's glass storefront, gold letters shining as if mocking Maya from the TV. Her fingers tightened around the remote as the report continued, but then a knock on her door pulled her attention away. Her father appeared in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space. "Maya, you okay?" Maya gestured to the TV. "Dad, they're talking about me on the news." Michael stepped inside and glanced at the screen, his face calm but serious. He sat on the bed beside her. "I'm not surprised. What you're doing, it's bigger than you now. People are listening." "I didn't expect this," Maya admitted, her voice soft. "I didn't think so many people would care." Michael looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "They care because you spoke up. You gave a voice to something a lot of people have been through, but were too afraid to say out loud. That's powerful, Maya. But now you need to decide how you're going to handle it." Maya leaned back, letting his words sink in. She felt the weight of the attention pressing on her, but she also felt something else, a responsibility to do something meaningful with it. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello? Hi, is this Maya Thompson?" A polite but professional voice asked. "Yes, this is Maya." "This is Sophia Bennett with Channel 8 News. First, let me say how inspiring your story has been for so many people. We'd love to invite you for an interview to talk about your experience and the growing movement you've started. Would you be open to that?" Maya froze. An interview? On live television? The idea of sitting in front of cameras, speaking to thousands of viewers, made her stomach twist. She began. Michael, who had been watching her closely, leaned in and whispered, "Say yes. You've got this." Maya took a deep breath. "Okay, yes, I'll do it." "Wonderful," Sophia said warmly. "We'll send you all the details. We look forward to hearing from you." When Maya hung up, her father grinned. "Proud of you, kiddo." "I don't know if I can do this," Maya said honestly, her nerves already building. Michael squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. You can. Just tell the truth. That's all you need to do. The next morning, Maya sat in the back seat of her father's car, clutching her hands in her lap. The city blurred past the window, but all she could focus on was the swirling storm of anxiety building in her chest. "You're going to be great," Michael said from the driver's seat, sensing her nerves. "Just be yourself." "I'm not like you, Dad," Maya admitted. "I'm not used to people looking at me, listening to me." Michael glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his voice gentle. "You're stronger than you think, Maya. Trust yourself." When they pulled up to the news station, Maya felt her heart start to race. A staff member met them at the entrance, leading them through a maze of hallways until they reached the set. The bright lights and polished desks felt surreal, like something out of a movie. Sophia Bennett, the anchor who had called Maya, approached them with a warm smile. "Maya, it's so nice to meet you," she said, shaking her hand. "We're going to keep this really conversational. Just tell your story in your own words. Okay?" Maya nodded, though her stomach flipped. As the cameras rolled and Sophia introduced her, Maya's mind went blank for a moment. But then Sophia turned to her, her expression kind. "Maya, your story has sparked a movement. Can you tell us why you decided to speak up?" Maya swallowed hard and looked straight into the camera, forcing herself to breathe. "I spoke up because I was tired of staying quiet. I was tired of feeling like I wasn't good enough because of how someone else saw me. And I know I'm not the only one who's been treated this way." Sophia nodded. "And what has the response been like for you?" Maya glanced briefly at her father, who sat off camera, watching her with quiet pride. "It's been overwhelming," she admitted, her voice steadying. "But it's also been amazing. So many people have shared their own stories, and it's made me realize how common this is. That's why I started using the hashtag #StandUpTogether to give people a place to speak out and be heard." Sophia smiled. "It's clear you've struck a chord, Maya. What do you hope happens next?" Maya took a deep breath, finding strength in the words that had been swirling in her heart. "I hope people realize that their voices matter. I hope businesses, like the one where this happened, start treating everyone with the respect they deserve. And I hope no one ever feels like they don't belong just because of who they are." The interview ended with applause from the crew, and when Maya stepped off set, Sophia squeezed her hand. "You did beautifully, Maya. You're making a difference." As Maya and her father walked back to the car, the sun was brighter, the air lighter. She felt the shift deep in her bones. "You crushed it," Michael said with a grin. "Thanks, Dad," Maya said, a smile finally breaking across her face. "I guess I just told the truth." And as the car pulled away, Maya's phone buzzed again. Another notification. Another story. Another voice joining the movement she had started. For the first time, Maya felt that fire inside her burning strong, not from anger, but from hope. The sunlight pouring through the living room windows did little to calm Maya's nerves. She sat cross-legged on the couch, her laptop balanced on her knees as her phone buzzed every few seconds. The video of her interview was spreading even faster than her first post. News outlets were picking it up. Bloggers were sharing it. And the hashtag #StandUpTogether had turned into something much bigger than she had ever imagined. She scrolled through the messages, some supportive, some skeptical, but what struck her the most were the personal stories. Each message felt like a window into someone else's world, like their pain and strength were reaching out to her. "This happened to me in college. I still think about it every day. Thank you for speaking up. My mom always told me to stay quiet to avoid trouble, but I'm so glad you didn't. You've given me the courage to stand up for myself at work. I didn't think I could do it until I saw you." Maya leaned back, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of it all. These were not just comments. These were people, real people, who had carried experiences like hers for years, without saying a word. Somehow, she had given them a reason to finally speak out. "Are you okay?" Her father's deep voice interrupted her thoughts. Michael stood in the doorway, his towering frame silhouetted against the light. He had been watching her more closely since the interview aired, no doubt worried about the pressure. "I'm fine, Dad," Maya said, though her voice sounded small even to her. Michael raised an eyebrow and walked over, sitting on the other side of the couch. "You don't look fine." Maya sighed and rubbed her temples. "It's just a lot. I didn't expect all these people to come forward. I didn't expect so many stories like mine." Her father nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's a heavy thing to carry, knowing you're helping people, but also feeling the weight of their stories." "Yeah," Maya whispered. She hesitated before asking, "What if I let them down? What if I don't do enough?" Michael leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You've already done more than most people ever do, Maya. Speaking out isn't easy, and the fact that you started this means you've given people something they didn't have before: hope." Maya looked at him, his words settling deep in her heart. Hope. She had not thought about it like that, but he was right. All those messages were not just about pain, they were about people finally feeling seen and heard. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a new notification. She glanced at the screen and froze. "Hey Maya, it's Carla. Can we meet up? There's something I think you should see." The coffee shop was small and quiet, tucked away on a corner in downtown Los Angeles. Maya arrived first, choosing a table near the window where the morning sun streamed through. She tapped her fingers nervously against her cup as she waited for Carla. When the door chimed, Maya looked up to see Carla walk in. She was dressed casually in jeans and a cardigan, her expression serious but warm. As soon as she sat down, Maya could tell something was on her mind. "Thanks for meeting me," Carla said, offering a small smile. "Of course," Maya replied. "What's going on?" Carla sighed and reached into her bag, pulling out a slim, slightly crumpled folder. She slid it across the table to Maya. "I thought you should have this." Maya opened the folder, her eyes widening as she leafed through its contents. Inside were printed emails, handwritten notes, and official documents, evidence of complaints filed against Jessica Monroe. They were dated years ago, long before Maya's incident. Most of the complaints came from customers, but a few came from employees, including Carla herself. "I kept copies," Carla explained quietly. "When I filed a complaint with AUM's corporate office, I knew they'd try to bury it. I didn't think it would matter back then, but now—" She trailed off, meeting Maya's gaze. "Now I think it can help." Maya's fingers trembled as she held the papers. "Why didn't they do anything?" "Because Jessica brought in sales," Carla said bitterly. "She knew how to cater to their ideal clients, and that's all they cared about. Anyone who didn't fit her idea of the brand didn't matter." Maya shook her head, anger bubbling in her chest. "That's so messed up." "It is," Carla agreed. "But that's why people like you matter, Maya. When you spoke up, you didn't let them sweep it under the rug. You made them listen." Maya looked down at the folder, her heart pounding. This was more than just her experience now. This was proof, a pattern of behavior that had been ignored for far too long. "What should we do with this?" Maya asked softly. Carla's expression was firm. "We take it to the people who can actually do something about it. News outlets, lawyers, whoever we need to. It's time for the truth to come out." Maya nodded, her resolve strengthening. She had been scared before, unsure if speaking up would make a difference. But now, with Carla's evidence in her hands and the voices of so many others behind her, she knew they had to keep going. That afternoon, Maya and Carla sat side by side in Michael's office at home. Papers were spread across the desk as Michael examined each one carefully. His expression was serious, his brow furrowed as he flipped through the documents. "This is solid," Michael finally said, setting the papers down. "It's not just your word anymore. This is a pattern, and it's going to be hard for AUM to ignore it now." "What should we do next?" Maya asked, glancing between her father and Carla. Michael leaned back in his chair. "We get this to someone who can help us. A good lawyer can make sure this gets the attention it deserves." "I know someone," Carla said. "A lawyer who's been helping employees who've faced workplace discrimination. I'll reach out to her and set up a meeting." Maya nodded, feeling a flicker of hope amid the tension. They had a plan, and for the first time since all this started, she felt like they were gaining ground. Michael turned to Maya, his expression softening. "You're doing good work, Maya. I know it feels heavy, but what you're doing matters." "I know," Maya said quietly. "It's just a lot to carry sometimes." Carla reached out and squeezed her hand gently. "You're not carrying it alone. We're in this together now." That evening, Maya sat at her desk, scrolling through the growing number of messages and stories flooding her inbox. She paused when she saw a new comment from a young girl named Isabella. "I was told I didn't belong at a store last month because of how I was dressed. Your story gave me the courage to tell my parents. Thank you for standing up for people like me." Maya leaned back in her chair, tears stinging her eyes. Every story she read reminded her why this fight mattered. It wasn't just about a dress, or even about Jessica Monroe. It was about making sure no one else felt like they had to shrink themselves because of someone else's judgment. Her father knocked softly on her door. "How are you holding up, kiddo?" Maya turned to him, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I'm okay. It's just, seeing all these stories, it makes me want to do more." Michael smiled and sat on the edge of her bed. "Then do more," he said simply. "You've already started something incredible. Keep pushing forward." Maya nodded, a small smile breaking through her exhaustion. "I will." As the sun set outside her window, casting streaks of orange and purple across the sky, Maya opened her laptop and began drafting a new post. "To everyone who shared their story, thank you. You've shown me that I'm not alone, and neither are you. Together, we can make a change. Stand up together." She hit post and sat back, watching as the first likes and shares began to roll in. For the first time in days, Maya didn't feel alone. She felt like part of something bigger, something real, and she was ready to keep fighting. Maya sat at the kitchen table the next morning, staring at her laptop as she refreshed her feed. The Stand Up Together movement was gaining more momentum than ever. Thousands of people had shared their stories, stories of being turned away from stores, dismissed at job interviews, and judged unfairly. It was both overwhelming and inspiring to see so many voices joining the cause. But not everything was positive. The first sign of trouble came when Maya opened her email and saw a new message from an unfamiliar name. The subject line read, "Cease and desist." Her heart sank as she clicked on it. The email was short and formal, filled with intimidating legal language that she barely understood. At the bottom, it was signed by AUM's legal team. "Maya?" Her father's voice cut through the silence. He was standing in the doorway, holding his coffee mug, looking at her with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Maya turned the laptop toward him, her voice shaking. "It's from AUM's lawyers. They're telling me to take down the videos and stop talking about the store." Michael's expression hardened as he set down his mug and pulled the laptop closer. He scanned the email, his brow furrowing. "They're trying to intimidate you, Maya. They're hoping you'll back down." "But can they do this?" Maya asked, her hands trembling slightly. "Can they really make me stop?" Michael shook his head firmly. "No, you're telling the truth, and you haven't done anything wrong. But we're not going to handle this alone." He picked up his phone and began scrolling through his contacts. "I'm calling a lawyer. Let's make sure we're ready for whatever they throw at us." Maya leaned back in her chair, exhaling shakily. Just yesterday, everything felt like it was moving in the right direction. But now, this email felt like a warning shot. Later that day, Maya sat in her father's home office with Lauren Pierce, a calm, no-nonsense lawyer with sharp eyes and a reassuring tone. "Don't let this scare you, Maya," Lauren said as she slid the email printout onto the desk. "This is a classic intimidation tactic. They're hoping you'll take the videos down and let the story fade. That's what people like them do when they're losing control of the narrative." Maya bit her lip. "But what happens if I don't? What if they try to sue me?" Lauren smiled slightly, her voice steady. "Truth is the strongest defense you have. You've been honest about what happened, and you have evidence to back you up. They don't want this to go to court because it'll just bring more attention to their behavior." Maya glanced at her father, who nodded encouragingly. "We've got your back, kiddo." Lauren continued, "I'll send a response to their legal team letting them know we're not backing down. In the meantime, I want you to keep doing exactly what you're doing, telling the truth, and staying focused on the bigger picture. Don't let this derail you." Maya took a deep breath, Lauren's confidence settling some of her nerves. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll keep going." By evening, Maya was back at her desk, drafting a new post. She wanted people to know what was happening, but she also didn't want to spread panic. Instead, she chose to focus on the movement. Sometimes, when you stand up for what's right, people will try to silence you. They'll try to intimidate you, to make you feel small. But we're not going anywhere. Thank you to everyone who has shared your stories. This fight is about all of us, and we're just getting started. Stand up together. She hesitated for a moment before hitting post, then sat back and waited. The response was immediate. Support poured in from people who refused to let her feel alone. "Don't let them scare you, Maya. We're with you. They're panicking because they know they're wrong. Keep going. Stand up together means we don't back down when it gets hard." Even a few celebrities joined the conversation, retweeting her post and voicing their support. Maya's phone buzzed nonstop, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt something else. Determination. The next morning, Maya's resolve was tested again. She was sitting at the dining room table, scrolling through articles on her phone, when a familiar headline caught her eye. "Boutique at the center of viral controversy speaks out." She clicked the link, her heart pounding. AUM had finally issued a statement. AUM prides itself on offering an inclusive and respectful environment for all customers. While we regret the incident involving Ms. Thompson, we do not condone harassment or false claims. The employee in question has been temporarily suspended as we conduct an internal review. Maya clenched her jaw as she read the words. False claims. They were trying to paint her as the liar. Her phone buzzed with a call from Emma. "Maya, did you see their statement? It's all over Twitter." "Yeah, I saw it," Maya said, her voice tight. "They're trying to make you look bad," Emma said angrily, "but people aren't buying it. Everyone's calling them out." Maya sighed and leaned back against her chair. "I just hate that they're twisting it, like I would make this up." "Well, they can't hide the truth forever," Emma said fiercely. "You've got Carla, and you've got all those stories people are sharing. They can't make this go away." Maya nodded, Emma's words giving her some comfort. "Thanks, Em. I just need to keep going, right?" "Right," Emma said firmly. "And don't forget you're not doing this alone." That afternoon, Maya sat in her room, reviewing the evidence Carla had shared with her. She felt the weight of what they were fighting for. This was not just about her experience. This was about every person who had ever been made to feel like they didn't belong. Her father knocked on the door and stepped inside, holding his phone. "You're going to want to see this." He handed her the phone, and Maya's breath caught as she read the message. "Hi, Maya. My name is Beth, and I'm a former AUM employee. I saw your story and wanted to reach out. Jessica treated me horribly when I worked there, and I know I'm not the only one. I'll share my story if it helps." Maya looked up at her dad, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's happening. More people are coming forward." Michael smiled and sat beside her. "That's what happens when someone has the courage to speak up. You started this, Maya. And now it's bigger than any one person. Maya felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. It was terrifying, but it was also empowering. She wasn't alone anymore. She picked up her phone and typed a response to Beth. "Thank you for sharing this with me. Your voice matters, and I'll make sure people hear it." That night, Maya sat on her bed, looking at the folder of evidence Carla had given her. The stories people were sharing, the support she had received, and even the pushback from AUM. It all pointed to one thing. This fight was far from over. She opened her laptop and began typing, this time with a sense of purpose that felt stronger than ever. To everyone who has been silenced, dismissed, or made to feel invisible, this is for you. The truth is louder than fear. Stand up together. As the post went live, Maya leaned back and let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. AUM could fight back. They could send lawyers, release statements, and try to twist the narrative. But Maya knew something they didn't. She wasn't afraid anymore. She had the truth, and she had an army of voices standing with her. And together, they were going to make sure the world listened. Maya woke up early the next morning, sunlight spilling into her room as her phone buzzed non-stop. The notification chime had become a constant presence over the past few days, an endless flood of comments, messages, and updates. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes before glancing at the screen. One message in particular caught her attention. It was from a reporter with a major news outlet. "We'd love to feature your story as part of a broader piece on discrimination in retail. Please let us know if you'd be interested in an interview. We believe your voice is helping create meaningful change." Maya stared at the message for a moment, letting the words sink in. It was starting to hit her that what she had done, what had started with one video, and a moment of courage had grown far beyond her expectations. She pulled herself out of bed and shuffled into the kitchen, where her dad was already up, sipping his coffee as he scrolled through his phone. He looked up when Maya entered, his smile soft but proud. "Good morning, superstar," he said. Maya rolled her eyes with a small grin. "Morning, Dad." He gestured toward the kitchen table, where he had already set out her favorite cereal. "There's a lot happening today. Have you checked your messages yet?" Maya sat down and poured milk over her cereal. "Yeah. A reporter wants to feature my story in a bigger piece." Michael set his coffee down and leaned against the counter, his expression serious. "That's a big opportunity, Maya, but I want to make sure you're ready for it. This kind of attention, it's not always easy to handle." "I know," Maya said, stirring her cereal absent-mindedly. "I just feel like this is what I have to do, you know? I can't stop now. There's too much at stake." Michael nodded, his gaze warm but firm. "Then you take it one step at a time. And remember, I'm with you every step of the way." Maya smiled softly. Her dad's unwavering support was like a lifeline. No matter how heavy this all felt, she knew she wasn't alone. Later that afternoon, Maya sat at her desk, staring at the live stream setup on her laptop. She had decided to host an open conversation online, a place where people could share their experiences, ask questions, and support each other. She wanted to turn the momentum from Stand Up Together into something that felt real and personal. She took a deep breath and clicked the Go Live button. Within seconds, viewers began trickling in, the chat bar on the side of the screen filled with messages of support. "Maya, thank you for doing this. You're an inspiration. We stand with you. Can I share my story? I've been through something similar." Maya leaned closer to the screen, her voice steady but soft. "Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I wanted to create a space where we can talk about what's happening not just to me, but to so many of you. If you've ever been made to feel small or invisible because of someone else's judgment, you're not alone. I've heard so many of your stories, and I want you to know that your voices matter." The comments poured in, more stories unfolding in real time. Maya read a few aloud, her voice full of empathy and determination. One message caught her eye from a user named Isabella F14. I've always been too scared to speak up, but you've shown me that it's possible. I don't feel alone anymore. Thank you, Maya." Maya paused, her throat tightening. "Isabella, thank you for saying that. Speaking up is scary, I know that better than anyone. But every time someone shares their story, it makes it harder for people to ignore us. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with us refusing to stay silent." As the live stream continued, more and more people shared their stories. It was like a floodgate had opened, voices that had been quiet for too long, finally finding space to be heard. Maya realized something as she listened. This movement was no longer about her. It was about every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. And they were standing up together. That evening, Maya sat on the couch beside her dad, scrolling through the messages and shares on her live stream. The video had already been watched thousands of times. "You did good today," Michael said, glancing at her. "Yeah," Maya replied softly, still processing it all. It felt bigger, like it's not just about me anymore. "That's because it isn't," Michael said, his tone steady. "Movements like this happen because one person has the courage to speak up. But it takes everyone to keep it going." Maya nodded, her chest swelling with a mix of pride and nervousness. "I just hope I'm doing enough." "You're doing more than enough," Michael assured her. "And you're not done yet." Maya smiled faintly, leaning back against the couch. The next morning, Maya was woken up by a phone call. Groggily, she reached for her phone and answered. "Hello?" "Maya, it's Carla," the voice on the other end said. "I have news." Maya sat up instantly, her heart pounding. "What's going on?" "I just got a call from my old coworker, another former AUM employee. She saw what we're doing, and she wants to come forward with her story. She said Jessica did the same thing to other customers while she worked there." Maya's jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" "Yes, and she has proof emails and notes documenting everything," Carla said. "She's willing to talk to the media. This could be huge, Maya." Maya felt a surge of hope rise in her chest. For weeks, she had felt like she was fighting an uphill battle, but now the pieces were falling into place. They had evidence, they had more voices, and people were starting to listen. "Let's do it," Maya said firmly. "Let's make sure people hear the truth." The following day, Maya and her father sat down with Carla and the former employee Jennifer Lee to record their stories. Jennifer was soft-spoken but determined, her hands steady as she held up the stack of emails she had saved. "When I worked at AUM," Jennifer explained, "Jessica constantly turned customers away if she thought they didn't fit the image. It was subtle at first, her tone, the way she'd ignore people. But then it got worse. I saw her treat people horribly, and I hated it, but I didn't say anything because I needed the job." She looked directly at Maya then, her voice stronger. "Seeing you speak out made me realize I can't stay quiet anymore. People like her shouldn't be allowed to get away with it." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of Jennifer's words. "Thank you for coming forward. I know how hard it is." Jennifer smiled faintly. "It's worth it if it helps." That night, Maya sat at her desk, watching as Jennifer's story spread across the internet. News outlets were finally picking up the full picture, not just Maya's experience, but the pattern of behavior that had been ignored for years. Her inbox was full of messages from people thanking her, encouraging her, and offering their support. Among them was a message from a teacher at a local high school. "Your story inspired my students today. They couldn't stop talking about how brave you are. Thank you for showing them what courage looks like." Maya sat back in her chair, her heart swelling. For the first time since this all began, she felt like they were winning. Her father knocked on her door and poked his head in. "How's it going, kiddo?" Maya smiled, her voice steady. "We're making progress, Dad. Real progress." Michael grinned. "That's my girl." As he left the room, Maya leaned back in her chair, the glow of her computer screen illuminating her face. They weren't done yet, but for the first time, Maya felt like change was finally within reach. and she was ready to see it through. The days that followed felt like a blur. Everywhere Maya looked, her phone, her laptop, even the news, she saw the momentum she had helped build. Voices were rising together, louder and clearer than ever before. What started as her story had grown into a movement of its own, fueled by people sharing their experiences and demanding change. Maya sat at the dining table with her father, scrolling through articles as Michael sipped his morning coffee. "Have you seen this?" Maya asked, holding up her phone. The headline made her heart leap. Retail giant AUM announces sweeping policy changes amid growing backlash. Michael leaned forward, his eyes scanning the screen. "About time," he muttered. "What are they saying?" Maya read aloud. "The company has announced mandatory diversity training for all employees, a full audit of their hiring practices, and a new zero-tolerance policy for discrimination." Michael gave her a proud smile. "You did that, Maya." Maya shook her head. "We did that. It wasn't just me. It was everyone who shared their stories and refused to stay quiet." Her phone buzzed just as she finished speaking. A notification from her inbox flashed across the screen. Youth Leadership Conference, invitation for Maya Thompson to speak. Her stomach did a flip as she opened the email. It was from the organizers of a national youth leadership event that brought together students and activists from across the country. "Dear Maya, your story has inspired countless people, and your courage has sparked a movement. We would be honored to have you as a keynote speaker at this year's Youth Voices Leadership Conference to share your experience and message of hope." Maya set her phone down, her pulse racing. "What is it?" Michael asked, watching her closely. "I've been invited to speak," Maya said quietly, barely believing the words as they left her mouth. "At a leadership conference. They want me to share my story." Michael's face broke into a wide grin. "That's incredible, Maya." "It's terrifying," she admitted. "Terrifying is good," Michael said, his voice steady. "It means it matters, and you've already proven you can handle this." Maya chewed her bottom lip, the idea of standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people, sending waves of anxiety through her. "What if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing?" Michael set his coffee down and leaned forward. "Maya, you've been speaking from the heart since this all started. That's why people are listening to you. You don't need to be perfect, just be real. That's what matters most." Maya took a deep breath, letting his words settle. "I'll think about it." Michael smiled knowingly. "You'll do more than think about it. You'll say yes." The day of the conference arrived sooner than Maya expected. She stood backstage at the large auditorium, her hands clammy as she clutched the speech she had written and rewritten a dozen times. From where she stood, she could hear the hum of hundreds of people gathering in the audience, their voices blending into an overwhelming murmur. Her dad was standing nearby, a steady and calming presence. "Nervous?" he asked gently. "Terrified," Maya admitted. Michael smiled and rested a hand on her shoulder. "You're ready for this, Maya. I know it feels huge, but remember, you've already done the hardest part. You've told your story. This is just the next step." Maya nodded, forcing herself to take slow, deep breaths. The conference organizer, a young woman with a headset, appeared beside her. "You're up in 2 minutes, Maya. Ready?" Not really, she thought, but instead, she nodded. "Yeah, I'm ready." She watched as the host introduced her. "And now please welcome someone whose courage and honesty have inspired thousands across the country. Her story reminds us all that one voice can start a movement. Let's give a warm welcome to Maya Thompson." The applause thundered through the auditorium as Maya stepped onto the stage. The bright lights hit her face immediately, making it impossible to see the crowd clearly. For a moment, she froze. The microphone seemed too far away, her footsteps too loud on the polished floor. "You can do this," she reminded herself. When she reached the podium, she placed her speech on the stand, her fingers shaking slightly. She took a deep breath and looked out into the sea of shadows beyond the lights. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice soft but steady. "My name is Maya Thompson, and I want to tell you a story about something that changed my life." The room quieted immediately, the murmurs silencing as every pair of eyes turned toward her. "A few weeks ago, I walked into a boutique to find a dress for my winter formal. I thought it was going to be a normal day, but it turned into something I'll never forget. I was told that I didn't belong there because of how I looked, how I dressed, and because someone else decided I wasn't good enough." Maya paused, letting her words settle. For a long time, I believed people when they said things like that. I believed I wasn't good enough. But that day, something inside me changed. I decided I wouldn't stay quiet anymore. I spoke up, not just for myself, but for anyone who's ever felt small because of someone else's judgment. She glanced down at her speech, but found she didn't need it. The words were already inside her. When I shared my story, I realized something powerful. I wasn't alone. So many people had been through the same thing, but they were too afraid to say anything. I learned that silence helps people like Jessica, people who judge, dismiss, and hurt others. But when we speak up, when we stand together, we become impossible to ignore. Her voice grew stronger. I started using the hashtag #StandUpTogether because I believe that change doesn't happen when one person speaks. It happens when all of us speak. It happens when we refuse to be silenced, when we refuse to accept that this is just the way things are. She looked out into the crowd, her heart pounding. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And if we keep standing together, we can create a world where no one has to feel invisible. The room was silent for a moment, and then the applause started soft at first, and then louder and louder, until it filled the entire auditorium. Maya stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the moment hitting her all at once. She stepped back from the podium, tears stinging her eyes as she smiled. As she walked off stage, her dad was waiting for her. Michael pulled her into a hug, his voice full of pride. "You did it, Maya," he whispered. "I knew you would." That evening, Maya sat in her room, scrolling through photos and videos from the conference. People had shared clips of her speech with messages of support. Her words gave me chills. Stand up together. Maya Thompson is proof that one voice can make a difference. She stopped when she saw a private message from someone named Ava K. It read, "Maya, I was in the audience today. Your story reminded me of my own, and for the first time, I feel like I can talk about it. Thank you for showing me that I'm not alone." Maya sat back, her heart full. Every doubt, every moment of fear had led her here to this. Her father knocked softly on her door. "How are you feeling, superstar?" Maya smiled at him. "Like I'm doing something that matters." Michael nodded. "You are." Maya turned back to her phone, her fingers hovering over the keyboard as she typed a new post. One voice can start a movement, but it takes all of us to create real change. Thank you to everyone who's sharing your stories. We're stronger together. Stand up together. As the post went live, Maya leaned back against her pillows, a sense of calm settling over her. For the first time in weeks, the weight of everything felt lighter. She wasn't just telling her story anymore. She was helping others tell theirs. And that was enough. The week after the conference was a whirlwind. Maya's speech had gone viral. News outlets and social media users praised her courage, her words resonating with people of all ages and backgrounds. Every time she checked her phone, there was a new wave of notifications, comments, messages, and shares. It felt surreal. But with the attention came a new set of challenges. Maya sat in her bedroom, scrolling through a news article titled, "Daughter of NBA Star Sparks Movement Against Discrimination." She sighed, the headline sinking into her chest like a stone. Daughter of NBA star. That part always seemed to overshadow everything else. She turned off her phone and lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The room felt quiet, too quiet. The past few weeks had been so loud, so full of movement and purpose, but now she felt the familiar pull of doubt creeping back in. "What if this isn't about me?" she whispered to herself. "What if people are only listening because of Dad?" The knock on her door startled her out of her thoughts. "Come in." Michael stepped inside, his tall frame filling the doorway as always, but his expression was gentle. "Hey, kiddo, you're awfully quiet. That's not like you." Maya sat up slowly, running a hand through her curls. "I'm just thinking." Michael walked over and sat beside her on the bed, his eyes full of quiet concern. "What's on your mind?" Maya hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone keeps calling me Michael Thompson's daughter. Like that's the only reason people care about what I'm saying. What if they're right?" Michael was quiet for a long moment, letting her words hang in the air. Then he spoke, his tone steady. "Maya, I know what it feels like to live in someone else's shadow. I spent my whole life being defined by basketball. People thought that's all I was, a guy who could dunk a ball. They didn't see me as anything more." He turned to look at her, his voice softer now. "But you're not me. And this movement you've started, it's yours. It's not about who I am. It's about who you are." Maya blinked back tears. "But what if they don't see that?" "They will," Michael said firmly, "because every time you speak, every time you stand up for yourself and for others, you're showing people who you are. You're more than my daughter, Maya. You're a leader. You're someone with a voice that's making a difference." Maya swallowed hard, his words settling deep in her chest. "I just don't want to let anyone down." Michael smiled softly. "You haven't. You won't. All you need to do is keep being you." Maya let out a shaky breath. "Thanks, Dad." Michael gave her a quick squeeze on the shoulder before standing up. "Anytime, kiddo. Now get dressed. There's someone I want you to meet." That afternoon, Maya found herself in a community center downtown, the kind of place she hadn't been to in years. The building was older, but the atmosphere inside buzzed with life. Kids chased each other through the hallways, and groups of teens sat at tables, chatting and working on projects. "Where are we?" Maya asked, as she followed her dad down a narrow hallway. "This is where I used to run basketball camps when I first retired," Michael said, glancing over his shoulder. "I've been wanting to show you this place for a while now. Thought today was a good day." He pushed open a set of double doors, leading into a large, multi-purpose room. At the front of the room, a woman in her early 40s was speaking to a group of teens. She wore jeans and a blue sweater, her energy warm and commanding. "Everyone, this is Miss Evelyn Carter," Michael said, gesturing toward her as he led Maya into the room. Evelyn looked up and smiled brightly. "Well, if it isn't Michael Thompson, you finally brought her." Michael grinned. "I told you I would." "Maya, this is Evelyn. She runs programs here to help kids build confidence and leadership skills." Maya extended her hand, feeling a bit shy. "It's nice to meet you." Evelyn shook her hand firmly, her smile unwavering. "Oh, I've heard all about you. You're doing incredible things, Maya." Maya's cheeks flushed. "Thank you." Evelyn turned to the group of teens and gestured toward Maya. "All right, everyone, I want you to meet Maya Thompson. She's a leader in her own right, someone who saw something wrong and decided to speak up." The group applauded softly, and Maya felt a bit overwhelmed. She glanced at her dad, who gave her a reassuring nod. "Why don't you tell us a little about what you've been doing?" Evelyn suggested, stepping back to give Maya the floor. Maya hesitated, her nerves bubbling up, but she took a deep breath and stepped forward. She looked at the group of teens, some curious, some shy, others scrolling on their phones, and decided to speak from the heart. "Hi," she began, her voice steady. "I'm Maya, and a few weeks ago, I went through something that made me realize how easy it is for people to feel invisible. I was told I didn't belong somewhere because of how I looked, and for a moment, I believed it. But then I decided to speak up, and it turns out, I wasn't alone." The group was listening now, their attention focused on her. Sometimes it's hard to believe your voice matters, but it does. Every time you stand up for yourself or for someone else, you're showing the world who you are, and you're helping someone else find the courage to do the same. A girl in the front row raised her hand. Was it scary, speaking up like that? Maya smiled faintly. Yeah, it was terrifying, but I think the scariest part is staying silent and wishing you had said something. The girl nodded thoughtfully, and another boy in the back spoke up. How do you know what to say when people don't listen? Maya considered the question carefully. You don't always know, but you don't have to have the perfect words. You just have to start. People listen when you're honest. Evelyn stepped forward, clapping her hands together. Maya, that was perfect. You're a natural leader. Maya smiled shyly, glancing at her dad, who was beaming with pride. After the group dispersed, Evelyn pulled Maya aside. You know, Maya, there are a lot of kids here who look up to people like you. They need someone to show them that speaking up is worth it. Maya nodded, her heart full. I want to help, however I can. Evelyn smiled warmly. Good. I think we can do something amazing together. As Maya and her dad walked back to the car, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The doubts that had been gnawing at her were quieter now. She wasn't just Michael Thompson's daughter. She was Maya, someone with her own voice, her own purpose, and the power to help others. Her father glanced at her as they drove home. You okay? Maya smiled. Yeah, I'm better than okay. And for the first time in a long time, she meant it. The afternoon sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, painting the Los Angeles skyline in hues of gold and pink. Maya stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, smoothing the skirt of her dress with slightly trembling hands. The dress wasn't from AUM. It wasn't designer. It wasn't wrapped in glittering tags or exclusive labels. It was something much better. The deep midnight blue gown hugged her frame in a way that made her feel graceful and confident. The fabric was soft, flowing with every small movement she made. It had been given to her by Evelyn Carter, the woman from the community center. It's yours, Maya, Evelyn had said, placing it in her hands earlier that week. This dress was made for someone who knows their worth, and I can't think of anyone better to wear it. Now, as Maya stared at herself, she realized it wasn't the dress that made her feel beautiful. It was everything it represented. Strength, courage, resilience. Wow, came her dad's voice from the doorway. Michael leaned against the frame, arms crossed, a proud smile on his face. You look incredible, kiddo. Maya turned toward him, feeling a shy smile tug at her lips. Thanks, Dad. Michael stepped into the room, adjusting the collar of his shirt as though preparing for something. You know, he said, his voice softer now, I hope tonight you'll let yourself enjoy this moment. You've been through a lot these past few weeks. You deserve to just be a teenager for a night. Maya nodded, her chest tightening with emotion. I will, Dad. I promise. He grinned and gestured toward the clock. All right. Emma's waiting outside. You don't want to keep your best friend waiting, do you? The drive to the winter formal was quiet, but comforting. Emma, her best friend, sat behind the wheel, stealing quick glances at Maya with a wide grin. You're glowing, Emma teased, reaching over to squeeze her hand. I mean it. You look amazing. Everyone is going to lose it when they see you. Maya laughed, a genuine laugh that felt light and free. It's not about that, Em. I feel good, you know, like I've finally let go of everything I was holding on to. Well, you should feel good, Emma said firmly. You started a whole movement, Maya. You showed the world what standing up for yourself really looks like. And tonight, we're going to celebrate all of it. Deal? Deal, Maya replied, her heart feeling warm. As they pulled into the school parking lot, Maya couldn't help but notice the scene unfolding in front of her. Groups of students clustered together, laughing and snapping pictures under the glow of string lights hanging from the trees. The gymnasium had been transformed into a magical space, the kind of thing Maya had only seen in movies. Emma parked the car and turned to Maya. "Ready?" Maya took a deep breath, the butterflies in her stomach fluttering. "Yeah, I'm ready." The moment Maya stepped through the double doors into the gymnasium, the room seemed to shift. Heads turned. Conversations paused for a brief moment. Maya caught glimpses of wide eyes and surprised faces as she walked in, her midnight blue gown trailing behind her like a soft wave. Emma grinned, whispering, "Told you they'd lose it." But Maya wasn't focused on the looks. For the first time, she wasn't worried about what anyone else thought. She didn't feel like she had to prove herself or explain who she was. She was just Maya, and that was enough. "Maya!" a voice called out. She turned to see a group of her classmates, waving her over. Among them were students she didn't even know very well, people she had shared classes with but never really spoken to. "You look beautiful," one of the girls said warmly. "And I loved your speech at the conference." Another added, "That whole movement, stand up together, it's amazing. I shared my own story because of you." Maya blinked, surprised but touched. "Thank you. That means a lot." As the night went on, Maya found herself smiling more than she had in weeks. She and Emma danced until their feet ached, the music pulsing through the air like a heartbeat. For a few hours, Maya let herself enjoy the simplicity of it all. The laughter, the music, the joy of just being a teenager. At one point, she stepped outside to catch her breath. The cool air greeted her as she leaned against a railing overlooking the school courtyard. String lights hung from trees, their soft glow illuminating the quiet space. "Maya?" She turned and saw a familiar face approaching Isabella, the young girl who had messaged her after Maya's live stream. She was wearing a pale pink dress, her hair pinned back neatly, but her expression was shy and nervous. "Hey," Maya said with a gentle smile. "You look great." Isabella fidgeted with the hem of her dress. "Thanks. I wasn't sure if I'd come tonight. I almost didn't." "Why not?" Maya asked softly. Isabella shrugged. "I've always been afraid of standing out. But then I saw your video, and I started following the Stand Up Together posts. It made me feel less alone. Like maybe I didn't have to hide so much." Maya's heart swelled. "I'm really glad you came, Isabella." Isabella looked up, her eyes shining. "Me too. I just wanted to say thank you. You don't know how much you've helped people like me." Maya felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You don't have to thank me. This movement, it's not about me. It's about all of us. People like you speaking up, sharing your stories, that's what makes it powerful." Isabella smiled, the nervousness in her posture softening. "Well, it wouldn't have started without you." Maya watched as Isabella turned to head back inside, her steps a little lighter now. Maya stayed for a moment longer, looking up at the stars. She thought about where this journey had started: one dress, one moment of humiliation, one decision to speak up. It had been terrifying, but it had also been worth it. Because now, people like Isabella felt seen. She felt her phone buzz in her pocket and pulled it out. It was a message from her dad. "Proud of you, kid. Always." Maya smiled, tucking the phone away as she made her way back inside. As the night drew to a close, Maya and Emma sat together on the bleachers, their shoes abandoned on the floor beside them. The music was softer now, and the gym was quieter as students began heading home. "Good night?" Emma asked, leaning her head against Maya's shoulder. "The best," Maya replied, her voice filled with contentment. Emma smiled. "You know, you're kind of amazing." Maya laughed lightly. "It's not just me. I'm part of something bigger now." "Yeah," Emma agreed. "But you're the one who started it." Maya looked out over the dance floor, where the string lights were starting to dim. She thought about everything she had been through: the fear, the doubt, the pushback, but also the kindness, the support, and the strength she had found along the way. She realized something in that moment. Standing up for herself had not just changed her world, it had connected her to others in ways she never thought possible. "Come on," Emma said, nudging her playfully. "Let's go before they kick us out." Maya stood up, picking up her shoes as she followed her friend toward the exit. She glanced back one last time, the gym glowing softly in the distance. This wasn't the end of her story, it was just the beginning. As she stepped outside into the cool night air, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. Maya was no longer afraid of taking up space. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't invisible. She was Maya Thompson, her own person, with her own voice, and she was ready to face whatever came next. A week after the winter formal, Maya sat in her room, with the afternoon sun streaming through her window. The world outside felt calmer now, quieter, though she knew things had changed for her, and for so many others. She scrolled through the Stand Up Together posts on her phone, seeing stories from people across the country and even around the world. Each post was a reminder of how far this movement had come, voices rising in unity, refusing to be silenced. Her laptop buzzed with a notification, an email. "Maya, your story has inspired my entire class. We've started a project to raise awareness about bias and discrimination in our school. Thank you for being brave enough to start this movement." Maya smiled softly, her heart full. She thought back to where it all began: a slap, a moment of humiliation, and a decision not to let herself be small. It had been terrifying to speak up, but now she saw the ripple effect that one moment of courage had created. Her dad appeared in the doorway, a cup of tea in his hand. "Still working, superstar?" Maya looked up and grinned. "Just reading messages." Michael sat beside her on the bed, handing her the tea. "You've made a real difference, Maya. People are listening, learning, and speaking up because of you." Maya nodded, feeling a sense of calm settle over her. "It's not just about me anymore, Dad. It's about all of us. And I'm proud of that." Michael smiled. "You should be." Maya looked out the window, watching the breeze rustle the trees. This was just the beginning. There would always be people like Jessica, people who judged others unfairly, who tried to make them feel invisible. But there would also be people like her, like Evelyn, like Carla, and like Isabella, people who stood together, who refused to back down. She turned back to her laptop and began typing a final post. "Thank you to everyone who has shared your stories and supported this movement. Stand Up Together isn't just a moment. It's a promise to speak up, to listen, and to create a world where everyone belongs. Let's keep going. Together." She hit post and closed her laptop, feeling lighter than she had in months. As her father stood to leave, Maya called after him. "Hey, Dad?" Michael turned back, raising an eyebrow. "Thank you for believing in me." Michael's smile was warm. "Always, kiddo. Always." Maya leaned back against her pillows, her heart full of hope. This was her story, but it was also their story, a story of resilience, kindness, and the power of speaking up. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more stories of hope, resilience, and standing up for what's right, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Together, we can create a brighter, kinder world. Stand up together.